All right, so there's obviously a lot of things that come into play when you're trying to build a $1 million business. But arguably, one of the best things that you could do in order to actually build a $1 million business is having top talent and A players that can actually automate and also scale your business. So they're essentially implementing the systems and all the AI automations that you actually need to scale your business to $1 million per month. So essentially, I'm going to be teaching you how to do exactly just that. And why should you trust me? Well, I've been mentored by top industry experts in multiple different industries. I've been mentored by the top players in the game, getting access to their paid stuff, hopping on one-on-one coaching calls for them, and I know a thing or two about business. I guess that's what you could say. So this guide is for online businesses looking to scale past $1 million per month. So coaches, creators, agency owners wanting to hire top teams with top talent in order to automate and scale their business. So before we even start, I want you to check out this really long Miro board I literally just created for you, so I can at least try and convince you that I actually know what I'm talking about. So she can start with the first point. So essentially, how a $1 million team would look like with your basic team structure is that you'd have five major departments, which are financing, marketing, operations, human resources, and information and technology. Covering over the most important one is finances. So all you can do is just completely hire an accountant for this. You don't really have to do anything else. But on the marketing side, what you actually have to do is have multiple people. So this would apply for creators or coaches. So you'd essentially have a growth operator who's handling the entire thing itself, or you could hire a top tier marketer. Then you have a content agency who's pumping out the content, since content is such a king in this new era of trust based attention, where we're in a trust based economy where people now have to trust you in order to buy stuff from you. So from the content agency, they'd be split up into a clipping agency, and then in the content agency, they'd have a thumbnail team and then the editing team. So the person or the people hiring your or in charge of your X threads, posts, and content scripts are the content writers and ghost writers. So these guys are making the entire scripts, are making the LinkedIn posts, thread posts, X posts, whatever. So once you've got that settled down with the content agency, you have the growth operators. You can now move to the operations department, which has the client success department. So you'd have set and designated people that actually monitor your clients to see if they get the amount of success that's actually required. So this is not you, you're completely automating your business. You don't have to monitor and actually do the results yourself or do all the fulfillment yourself. You already have somebody who's actually doing that for you. So having a client success department is extremely important. Next, we have the sales team. So these guys actually close, set appointments, book in calls. So we've had the high ticket closers, appointment setters, and the appointment setters are divided into two things: inbound setters, so people who actually book in those calls from warm leads, or people who actually signed up and raise their hand from your paid advertisement or your content. So they'd essentially raise their hand, come into your business, essentially get setted, qualified by the appointment setter, and the high ticket closer would finish up the job. Afterwards, you have outbound setters who are actually doing the cold outreach, cold DMs, cold email, and maybe even paid advertisements. And in the operations, you also have the virtual assistant. So these guys are actually handling your emails, your calendar. These guys are updating you in everything that you need to do, and you can essentially just ask them what you need to do, and then they just do it for you. So what you're doing on this side, you're just recording the content, you're hopping on the calls, so on and so forth. But it has little or almost minimal effort that's required from you, since your literal team is hiring all of this. So after operations, you'd have human resources. So recruiting agency, you'd have a recruiting agency that actually hires top tier talent and takes them through the processing process, which I covered in this video, in order to actually get A tier players in your team and also scale it to $1 million per month. So after the human resources, you have information technology. So these people are the coders, the people creating your softwares, your course content, hosting your free ebooks or your services, turn it into software as a service, and then AI agents. These guys are actually running your business with little to no cost whatsoever. They cost cheaper than a team. So once you already got the basic team structure down, which you can change and modify to your own and make it even better, we can finally move to the core systems or the backbone of your team hiring. So first, you have a daily war room. So essentially, this daily war room is 60 to 90 minutes. So the goal of this is multifaceted. So essentially, you're catching up, you're doing collaborative work, you're building your culture, purpose, all in one into one singular day that's 60 to 9 minutes. So these are daily hour-long meetings with the entire team breaking down into their own departments after 30 minutes. So essentially, you're getting the team to come together and be considered as close with each other because they'd be hopping on these daily calls every day. And most importantly, most of your team are just people sitting down in front of their computers doing all the busy and lazy work. But what you could do with that is actually put them in a daily war room, put them in the daily war room to actually do their collaborative work, to actually improve and build up the teamwork culture. So this daily war room is extremely important. This is what Eamon Godsey uses in his own team. So what you do in these daily war rooms is to review KPIs, bottlenecks, and strategic fire or action. So each member leaves with one action that actually moves the needle. So essentially, what this would look like is having your main team calls. So for 30 minutes, everyone gets to talk with each other. Yo, what's up, John? Yeah. So how's it been? After 30 minutes, you'd have your department breakout calls. So each department gets their own call. So this could be the marketing side, this could be the operations side, and this could be the information technology side. Afterwards, once you implemented the daily war rooms into your own business, you could have these weekly mission briefs or asynchronous SOPs that your team leaders have to send a three-part document every Monday. So every Monday they have to send these three criteria. So what I'm working on, what I need help with, and what's being blocked. So each team member needs to fill up their own Google Forms that tracks daily KPIs and amount of work actually being produced. So what this forces is clarity, accountability, and team trust. So an example of this would be something like this. So this is our weekly DM appointment setter tracker. So we're tracking the KPIs of our appointment setters. So description, submit every Sunday by 6 p.m. And essentially their full name, the week, then the total DM. So these are the KPIs that we actually need to track. Sales made, appointments that showed up, and then follow insights and quality. So how warm these guys, the top objections that you'd have this week, any hot leads, did you hit the 100 DM goal? Did you generate at least 5 quality conversations? And then rate your DM quality per week. So this is a really good SOP for appointment setters. And in your team, you'd have different kinds of SOPs or forms that your each of your team members would need to fill out in different departments. So if you were in the marketing side, they'd have different forms that's not similar to the appointment setting one. So once you finish up with that, we'd now have the red zone culture score. So essentially, you'd have a weekly ranking of every player from 1 to 5. So let's say the top performing player is number 1, then 2, 3, and 4. So if you have a 3 rank and below, you are under fire. Because nobody wants to be expelled or nobody wants to be last on the work performance output. So you're supposed to rank based on these criteria: output, ownership, energy, and initiative. So if somebody says stays in the red zone for 3 weeks, replace them. So for at least 3 weeks, if they stay in that place under 3, they get fired. So what this does is essentially focuses and forces team output and team performance because nobody wants to be put in the last place and be called the most laziest one. Everybody wants to freaking hustle. This is only here that's meant to actually improve team culture since your team is made of A players who are actually trying to scale your business to $1 million. Afterwards, you have real-time team data. So essentially having a public dashboard that everybody can see each other's performance. So essentially the revenue, the leads, the views, outreaches, cold calls, etc. So what this does is creates competition, responsibility, ownership. Because listen, man, nobody wants to be in the last place and be the least performing team member in the team, since everybody can see each other, see their performance and the results. So if one of the team members isn't fit with the standards of your business, they're out of the mission, they're out of the purpose, or they're out of the big goal that's in your mind, or what you're essentially trying to achieve with your business, with your six-figure business. So once you've got the backbone down, you've got the core systems down, you'd have this commitment and capability chart. So essentially, capability is on this side, and then the commitment is on this side. So a C player is somebody with low capability and low commitment. So this is somebody that you really want to get out of your business, or essentially just provide them with the necessary training and data for them to actually, in order to make them into an A player, because that's the goal. Our goal is to make an A player who has high capability and high commitment. So with this C player, the goal is to simply just give them the necessary training data, ask them and give them two attempts to actually evolve. So what you say to them is have at least two attempts saying that, hey, name, can you start being more capable or can you start being more committed, etc. etc. Next is a B player. So this B player is loyal with high commitment, but he is simply not capable. Now this is a very easy solution. What you can do with this player is simply offer them the basic and necessity, the necessary training and data that's needed for them to become at least an A player. So this person, you'd have to offer them all the mentorships, but what you need to look for in their character is one thing. You just need to look for their willingness to learn. If they're not willing to learn, if they're not willing to become somebody who's capable and who can actually overperform and over deliver in order to scale your business and provide the necessary mission and fulfill the mission, then simply just fire them. You cover all of the trainings, you cover all of the mentorship, you cover all of the coaching, but what you ask from them is for their commitment and their willingness to actually want to learn. Next, we have a B player, be capable. So this is somebody who's capable but not loyal. This is the type of guy who gets the job done, the person who finished up with the job, but he's not loyal. He doesn't hop, he doesn't fill out his daily forums, he doesn't respect his higher ups, he simply just doesn't attend the group coaching calls. This guy is simply just not loyal. So what you do with this guy is to give them a challenge. Challenge. These guys typically have high egos, so ego, and the best way to actually break an ego is by giving them a challenge. So essentially, a challenge that's so impossible that they can't even do it themselves. So when they try to actually fix the challenge, when they try to fix, but they end up failing, what you then do afterwards is point out their mistakes. So you point out their flaws. Simply point out their flaw. You tell them this is what you do. If you're stuck, if you're trying to be somebody who does it by himself, this is where you will stay. And if you don't change yourself, if you don't become somebody who's loyal to our business, you can simply fuck off. Just fire them immediately. And then the last person, the A players. So these are the A tier top players, the people who are insanely capable, the people who get the job done, and the people who are actually loyal to your business. So these are the people who are extremely committed to your business, extremely passionate and on fire for the goal that you have, or the goal that the mission and the goal of your vision of your business, and they want to be with you every part of the way. So what you want to do with these guys is acknowledge them. Acknowledge. You give them gratitude, you thank them for their work, you acknowledge them, and you even promote them to a team leader. They can be a department leader. These guys are the leading ones. You don't want them to leave your business. You want them to stay in your business. This is somebody that you want to absolutely work with. But if the person is an A player and he's simply, let's say, this guy is simply lame, somebody who doesn't have any personality, it's fine. That depends on you as a business owner. But if you're trying to build a work culture that's extremely strong, all the team members get along and you also get along with the team members, then you need to have somebody who's actually a fun personality to be around, somebody who's actually social, but also capable and extremely committed. So we've got the commitment and capability chart down. Now it's time to move on to the Hell Week hiring. So the purpose of this This is the hell week hiring phase. So this is the selection process. This filters out the soft and makes sure that it seems like they apply for the Navy SEALs. Because this is what it actually takes to join a top performing A player team and also serve for a vision that's bigger than the entire business itself. Don't put any idols, but do this for God. So in your Hell Week hiring phase or in your selection process, you'd have the structure is simple. It has four phases, which lasts for 7 days. So the phase one is a pressure test. So your goal is to give them a 48-hour challenging task that's actually suited for their role. So for example, if they're a copywriter, you need to ask them to rewrite multiple VSLs in under 1 hour. If they're a setter, you need to ask them to book two calls using your scripts and leads. If they're an editor, you want them to cut three shorts with three different styles. If they can't do the task, then it's fine. Because what you'll do is actually provide them with the necessary training that they need to actually do that task. But the goal of this entire pressure test phase is to see how they react and how committed they are against a very challenging task, to see if they actually just give up once they face the most littlest of difficulties, once they face the most little of the obstacles. So this is simply just to gauge their character and to see how aggressive they are to actually join your team and to actually scale the business to $1 million per month. Next phase is the live fire simulation. So essentially a 30-minute live call with you or your department head. So your goal is to role play a real scenario. So if they're a closer, stubborn objection handling, so you would essentially give them so many objections and you need to gauge how they actually react. If they're ops, you need to troubleshoot with a delivery issue. If they're creative, you want to ask them to pitch a video idea in 5 minutes. Again, figure out how they react. Watch out and filter out those who are toxic for your team. So these are the guys who are giving excuses like, "Oh no, I can't do that," or the people who are always freaking complaining. So people who are, "Oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this." These guys are freaking toxic for your team. Do not invite them to your team. So what you're looking for is composure, speed, clarity, and hunger. So phase three is actually giving feedback and testing them. So your goal is to give them blunt surgical feedback. So that hook was weak. You missed the brief. This won't convert. And then do it again. You've got 3 hours. So you need to watch if they get defensive. If they get defensive, throw them out in the trash. Exactly what this emoji says. But if they get obsessed and over deliver immediately, fire. This no, not allow me fire, but actually invite them over to your team. So most people have already failed by this phase. This is one last confirmation. So one last phase is the culture call or the final filter. So one last team member actually chats with them. So they ask, "Why do you want to be on this team?" So if they hesitate or seem transactional or unsure, reject them immediately. But if they actually give in some thought and actually seem to care, they're in. The criteria is speed over skill, intensity over politeness, ownership over obedience, and being cool over lame. Once you've actually hired them, you can now finally onboard them. So you need to onboard like a literal cult, not as in being a literal cult, but using the same tactics that a cult leader would. So the goal of this, most teams fail because new hires don't absorb the vision, pace, and standard. They don't actually understand what your business is actually trying to do for the market, and they just think that, oh, I can just make a few VSLs and then get my $1,000 paycheck. No, you're not onboarding employees, you're trying to convert disciples. So you have to train and mentor them into actual A players to build a high performing $1 million team to scale your business. So the first 7 days is simple indoctrination. So what they do is watch founder content, so stuff on your YouTube channel or maybe trainings. They study SOPs, so they literally hand out a little notebook. Yeah, notebook over here, and then they'd write down and study the SOPs themselves. Then they'd understand and be on fire for the vision and mission of your business. They'd learn the team lingo or how your team essentially talks with each other. And then what you need to do is to actually talk with them and see who's capable and committed. So new employees bleed your brand starting from day one because you've already indoctrinated them. They understand your vision and mission. They've watched and saw your founder content and they've studied the SOPs. Next is the indoctrination. So your goal is to literally just indoctrinate them. So essentially, what I've talked about earlier, they study the founder mindset. So they essentially watch your content, especially the most intense stuff, stuff that actually shares your mindset and vision, and no fluff pieces. So pieces that actually show your entire personality by itself, so that the employees can actually bleed your personality, bleed your vision, bleed your literal mission that you actually want to carry out you with your own business. So essentially watching your content, then reading your Twitter, X, even thread posts or internal Notion docs, so they essentially get a feel of what your intensity is. They absorb your tone, rhythm, and beliefs. So your goal is to watch three competitors that you actually hate and break down what they do well, what we can do better, and where we will actually crush them. So what they do well, what we can do better, and where we will crush them. Once you've finished up with day 1 to 3, you can finally get started with the day 4 to 5. So essentially, role specific trials. So the goal of this is for immediate feedback. You don't want any sugarcoating. You need to see who actually reciprocates the same energy and is actually capable for being a high performer with top tier talent. So what your goal is to assign a real life task based on their functions. So if they're an editor, 60-second short form clip. If they're a setter, send 5 cold DMs. If they're creative, 3 hooks for a top offer. So if they're high capability and low commitment, you want to challenge out their ego, point out where they will stay stuck if they don't lower down their ego and if they don't actually work with your team. If they're low capability and high commitment, you need to provide them with the necessary training and coaching in their role team leaders to take them on. And if they can't become a high performer in a few days, we cut them off immediately. We don't have all day for them to wait for them to produce. Finally, day 6 to 7 is a culture alignment call, or essentially converting them. So after they've been provided with the necessary basic minimum training, if they're committed and capable enough to be at least willing to learn, and let them on the team and take it simply from there. So day 6 would be a culture alignment call. So it's a 30-minute one-on-one with you or a team leader. So you're supposed to ask, what does this mission mean to you now? So do they speak like a warrior or a worker? You don't want any workers. You want a freaking warrior, somebody who can actually listen to you. You need leadership in your $1 million business to actually lead these top tier talent or people who can be more capable than you, because you are the CEO, you are the businessman, you're the one who's finding all of these people and actually hiring them and managing them and retaining them. So, is this somebody that you truly want to work with? Are they lame? Are they somebody who's a fun personality? Are they somebody who's not serious? Are they somebody who's toxic to your business? Somebody that always complains? Somebody that always has excuses? And if there's any long hesitation, they're out. Finally, it's day 7, which is full integration and conversion. So you're supposed to promote them to a full player or cut. There's no bench warmers here. So introduce them to the entire team and have a mini celebration on a call where team members congratulate them in their own department. So this induces trust and makes them feel like they're part of something bigger, and makes it feel like they overcame the first obstacle and roadblock. So the goal of this with this mini celebration is to essentially gather up all the team members. Yes, you did it. You actually passed our team. You can finally work and scale this guy's business above $1 million. The goal of this is to essentially make them feel good, make them induce team culture, a positive team culture, a culture that actually people want to be around with, because your team or your coworkers, your employee, your work base is your second family, because most people spend more time with their employees than they do with their own families. And why are they actually going to their jobs and spending more time with their coworkers? Well, it's in order for them to actually provide to their family. So once you've onboarded them, you've hired them, you can finally move on to the weekly microscope sync. So the purpose of this, most teams get stuck and lost in the all the big vision talk. We're going to revolutionize the education space. We're going to revolutionize the way agency owners deliver their services through our software as a service. Winners need to zoom into the weekly and execution that actually matters. And I'm not saying that you should completely get rid of the big vision talk. You should get rid of the the long term goals that actually matter. What I want you to do is focus on the execution of those goals, or focus on what you need to actually do in order to reach those goals. So you're not completely ignoring the goals themselves, because the telescope gives the direction. So they're giving the direction. while the microscope delivers the money in order to actually reach that destination. So yeah, whatever. I'm not sure if that diagram made sense, but anyways, so your step one is to set the telescope or the mission. So you tell them the big goals, the vision and mission of your business, and what it actually means to both you and them, what it should mean to them, and what it means to you. So you need to deliver the exact amount of emotions that they actually need, get them emotional, and get them on fire, absolutely fired for your business. So you need to break down the necessary long term, medium term, and short term goals in order to actually make that goal happen. So you need to backward plan revenue targets, acquisition strategies, and define their team roles. So macro focus is focusing on the big goal, while micro focus is focusing on the actions in order to reach that big goal. So step two is to break down the weekly micro goals. So each person owns one weekly needle moving metric. So what I've made over here is an Excel file for our business that's actually scaling right now. The setter's metric is booking in more calls, so 40 calls per week. The closer, editor, ops, and founder. So all these guys have metrics and weekly targets with those metrics. So each one gets their own specific metric. What this does is make them feel like they've actually owned something and they're actually responsible with something than just, let's say, yeah, I'm gonna just leave you here. So just post how many videos you want. And what that typically ends up doing is the employee underperforms by posting one singular video every week. That's pretty shit. So after the weekly micro goals, you need to move to the weekly micro steps king. So you need to review each player's micro goals. So what are you doing this week to hit your KPIs or your number? What's blocking you from actually hitting that KPI or your goal? And are you ahead, behind, or simply just flat? So the goal of this is to prevent drift. This forces momentum into your business, momentum into your entire team and work culture. So step four is a public scoreboard or a heat check. So you need to keep a live Notion or Slack leaderboard. So you're supposed to celebrate momentum and large wins and expose the slackers or people who are actually slacking off, which is what I actually told you earlier over here, the real-time team data. And finally is a 90-day reflection. So which team member grew the most? These guys are your A players. These guys are the people who you need to acknowledge, the people who you need to get credit for, and actually promote them. Who needs to be replaced? So the slackers that aren't really doing anything. What systems broke under pressure? Repeat telescope and microscope loop. So you're supposed to gauge each member and see how they've been able to perform under the 90-day sprint. So the highest performers will be added to the A plus team, while the lowest performers are hired. The middle performers will be given the necessary training required to become an A player. This environment forces competitiveness. By the way, I didn't mean I mean fired, not hired. And we're done. All right, so we're done. By the way, since you've already finished watching this video, and if you don't have enough time to actually implement all of the systems that I've shown, or maybe you want to work with me, just click on the description below and see it for yourself. Alright, peace.